May I kindly request that you get seated? We shall start. I don't know if the microphones are, yes, they're working. So those at the table may want to grab a sandwich while they last and get seated. Well, thank you everyone for taking the time to come to, I think this is the first time we call it a Café de l'innovation et de la recherche, is it? Yes, and quite appropriately so, because we're going to be talking about research and innovation and translation. And we are very excited to have today with us Professor Erwin Böttinger, who's the new director of the Wyss Center for Bio and Neuroengineering, based at Campus Biotech. And the idea is really to have him here within the hospital walls, even though they're not a traditional meeting room that you find in hospitals, but to meet with the hospital ecosystem and see what kind of new connections can be established. And I think connections are very important when you talk about brains and so on. Well, you are a physician by training, a nephrologist by specialization, and then moved in the field of genomic medicine, precision medicine, digital medicine. And I think you've set up quite a few places that are dedicated to innovation and translation, both in Germany, in the US, and in particular at the Mount Sinai University in New York. I think you're going to tell us a bit more about all this, and we're excited to hear what you've been doing, and hopefully also tell us where we're going and how we can go there together. Very excited to have you here, Erwin. And well, the floor is yours.
Great, thank you. And I've really been looking forward to this day and this event. It's my first presentation since I arrived in Switzerland, and certainly my arrival in Switzerland is one that is not half-hearted. So, with the fullest intent to make an impact here, to meet great people, to work together, and to achieve great things together. And so my wife, Corinne, and I, we packed up our residence in Berlin, where we spent 7.5 great years, and moved to Geneva, and here we are. And I have to say, we're both very happy so far. But I'm very confident it will remain that way, and we're looking forward to engaging at every level. And indeed, as was mentioned, since April, I'm the new director of the Wyss Center for Bio and Neuroengineering. And I will, towards the end of my presentation, obviously also tell you a little bit about where we are there. It's a time of transition for the Wyss Center. And we have gone through a process of project analysis, prioritization, and a new strategy for the coming 5 years. So it will be Wyss Center Geneva Projects and Strategy 2023 to 2027. So as is always the case with transition, it's not a good idea to put things on slides in a public forum. As you understand, there will be changes in staff, changes in resources, and so on. So forgive me if at the end, I will show you what our general strategy and the strategic priorities are, yet, the details as to what it means for our projects and work going forward, in particular also what it means for potential collaboration with AGG, the University of Geneva, that will need to be the topic of future conversation. But what I thought I'd do today is hit hard on the theme of translation, because that's something that certainly is written into the DNA of the Wyss Center, and it's also what throughout my career in establishing institutes and centers in the US and in Germany has been, I think, a constant. although the focus in the area has changed, but the translational aspect has been a constant. And as was already mentioned briefly, kind of considering myself a little bit like a surfer, although I'm far from it. And if you put me on a surfboard, you know, I'd probably be a microsecond upright and then underwater. But surfing the next big wave is something that is fascinating me. And so we're going from the genomic revolution, the digital revolution, personalized medicine. And you might ask in the end, why is he now at the Wyss Center in Switzerland? Because I do believe there's a great future for digital medicine and also working from wearables towards implants and learning much more about signals from the body, from the brain in the context of the Wyss with machine learning and AI. And so, but we're not there yet, and I'll take you through a few stations on this journey. Again, thank you for inviting me. It's a pleasure to be here, and I'm looking forward to following up in conversations, if not today, over the next weeks or month. Okay, a few disclosures. I've obviously, throughout the years, I've been invited to serve on a number of boards, and I've been active in founding companies and so on. So they're all listed here, what I have as of today. So getting back a long, long time, not just decades, but that sets the stage, I think, when we quote Hippocrates, who is believed to have said, it's far more important to know what person the disease has than what disease the person has. And that plays already to the holistic view of medicine, that there are a lot of aspects that play into how an individual responds to a disease, to a health challenge. And in some instances, the course is one of minor, minor abnormalities. And in other instances, the course for the same disease is very severe, chronic, debilitating, with very severe outcome and impact on quality of life of the individual. And so therefore, I'm motivated by understanding more about the person and how what we can learn about the person interacts with the challenges for their health that they face. And so we are looking clearly at the beginning of the 21st century at a number of advances that a generation ago were not considered possible. And so first of all, let me give, some in the audience might perhaps recognize this, device. It has a name, it's written on the device, and this device is called Simon. Hey, Simon, right? And what was Simon? That's the first smartphone, 1994. It's an IBM device, smartphone, and in August 1994, so almost 30 years ago, more than a generation. And Simon had the phenomenal capacity of 1 megabyte of RAM. And the computational resource of 1 megabyte of RAM is minuscule. You know, today when you have your data plan, it's just, but at the time it was a breakthrough, it was the first smartphone. But with many developments in technology, this also captured sort of the field, and the technological evolution was phenomenal. And now in the iPhone, I have mine in my bag, the latest iPhone, we have 6 gigabyte of RAM. And this iPhone that you have now, or also the Google or the Android smartphones, they can process, they can run AI complex algorithms, artificial intelligence algorithms in memory on the chip. And so when you get amazed about the wonderful, beautiful pictures that your lens takes, your camera on the iPhone or the Android, you're amazed. But it's not the lens, it's not the phone that does it, it's the algorithm that it's processing the image on the chip in the phone. And so if an iPhone can do that, right, it can process also algorithms that are concerned about health on the chip, on the fly. So this opens completely new possibility of bringing AI-assisted medicine into the palm, into the pocket of our patients, we'll get to that a little bit. Now, who knows these two gentlemen? Craig Venter, right, and Francis Collins. And so they have been in competition, healthy competition, throughout the 90s in the private and public sector. And Francis Collins at the time was the head of the National Human Genome Research Institute in the United States and overseeing the Human Genome Project, where, you know, around the world, many institutions were working together with the methodology that was available at the time to complete the first whole human genome sequence. And so then a smart guy came in and said, I can do it better and much faster and cheaper. That's Craig Venter, who founded the company Celera, and they said, we can do it different with another methodology. And they were indeed for a long time much faster. They inspired the public effort to get faster, and so there was a competition. And then Bill Clinton at the time had the Solomonic solution that they needed to cross the finish line at the same time. And in fact, in 2001, in February 2001, with a ceremony was the announcement of the completion of the first human genome, and there were two winners, Celera and the public project. And so this gave rise to the genomic technologies revolution. And when we look back, again, the technology that has been inspired by these big programs to complete the first human genome took several $1 billion and years of international collaboration or big machines at Celera. And today you can have your genome sequenced in a day at fast facilities, and certainly in many places for under $1,000. And we think about a whole genome sequence for under $1,000 that then is in the range of a complex imaging study, complex other diagnostic studies, and it's not out of the range economically to become part of our clinical data environment that is helping us making better and more precise decisions. So I'm just leaving this now with you to think about how fast technology is moving. And when you think ahead for the next 10, 20, 30 years, we are still at an accelerated exponential growth phase with these technologies. And just imagine what could be possible. Some of the things we are touching upon. And certainly, so I predict that in the future in medicine, DNA, the whole genome sequence, will be part of the data environment. It will be part of your health record. The sequence should be at least for most instances, derived, DNA should be sequenced at birth or soon thereafter. And then since this is somatic, this is germline DNA, the information is available for a lifetime. And we will get to how this can inform better decision-making. So when all of these things had come together, I was in New York, I was a nephrologist. I had stopped my clinical activities because running a dialysis unit was not such an exciting prospect for me at the time. I was in research and I said, I want to push personalized medicine. I want to take genomic information and I want to bring it into a real world context in the context of clinical care at a large academic hospital in the United States. And I had just arrived at Mount Sinai in 2003, and I had found a very receptive environment there. Leadership supported me in formulating a proposal to do that, to link clinical information system and genomes to, at the time, run discovery studies about the genetic underpinnings of disease. And so Mount Sinai is a large academic health system similar to Ajuché, with several campuses. There are now 9 or 10 hospital campuses. They're growing by the month, millions of patients, and a completely digital data infrastructure. So all the electronic health records since 2003 is digital. It's in the EPIC electronic health record system that some of you may be familiar with. It's the leading vendor of EHR in the US and increasingly also in Europe. And I think Lucerne has an EPIC implementation. Now I've just learned that in Berlin, the Charité is getting an EPIC implementation and so on. So there's sort of a global advance of this particular type of electronic health record, and it has deficiencies and weaknesses, but it is computer readable, provides access to data, computer readable, and we can, with digital advances, really derive information and knowledge from electronic health records at large scale. So this is what we found, and I felt that we needed to have consent from patients out of clinics for open future biomedical research of their electronic health record data going into the past, in the present, and also with every visit in the future. And we would take one blood sample as an add-on to a clinical blood draw, which is going for research. It went to the biobank laboratory, where we immediately separated plasma and for the freezer, extracted DNA and subjected the DNA to, at the time, it was genome-wide genotyping. It was not sequencing yet. Now, since I left or before I left, we already engaged in sequencing all the samples. So there are now 60,000 patients enrolled under full open future biomedical research consent, and about 40,000 of those have exome sequence and 20,000 have whole genome sequence, and all of them have genome-wide genotype data. We also had the foresight to say that they would, by giving consent, allow us to recontact the individuals, and that opens the possibility to, if you find interesting or important or relevant genetic information for the individual's health future state of health, then you could bring them back and involve them in a follow-up activity. So this resource, without going into the detail, with building a research team, recruiting multiple faculty that were working on this resource, has made major contributions to many of the genotype-phenotype association studies, genome-wide association studies that you may have heard over the years, where the whole genome is scanned for statistical association of particular genetic markers with a particular phenotype, be it a disease, be it a response to a treatment, any clinical phenotype across the spectrum of health and healthcare and medicine. There have been now thousands and thousands of studies applying the same method of genome-wide association study. This is so-called Manhattan plot because it looks a little bit like Manhattan. You have sort of these peaks, and these peaks are nice. You like to see those peaks because there's a region in the genome where there's a highly statistically significant association with the phenotype that you're interested in, right? Could be stroke, it could be whatever the phenotypic trait is. And so we contributed a lot. We've now published over 200 papers as part of the major consortia in the field of genomics. Genomics is one of the fields in life science and medical research that have embraced the notion of big science, that have organized themselves very efficiently to collaborate around the world. And now when you see those big genomic papers, the landmark papers in Nature or Science or what have you, and you see there are like in excess of 100 authors from maybe 60 or 50 institutions around the world. And that's a big feat in and of itself to be able to organize this. So we were part of many of those. We've made contributions from our Mount Sinai patients to body mass index, obesity biology, many publications on the genetic architecture of diabetes, type 2 diabetes, coronary artery disease, and so on. So this is for discovery. We also leveraged what is a unique feature of such a clinical-based biobank, and that is that the age starts with the age when the patients come or when they are born. And in this case, we had also pediatric biobank. We had patients of all age ranges from 18 to 90 in the adult spectrum. And so you could look at phenotype association at many different age periods, life periods. And so what in many studies is not possible because the entry eligibility is 45 years, 50 years for many of the studies on coronary artery disease and so on and so forth. So we found, for instance, that a particular genotype that is associated with kidney disease in African Americans, in African populations, sub-Saharan populations, that in fact, in young African Americans, if they are homozygous for a particular genotype in this gene, apolipoprotein 1, they have significantly, very significantly higher blood pressure, and they have younger onset of a diagnosis of hypertension. This was found uniquely in this biobank. And why is this important? First of all, it was known from epidemiological studies like NHANES that young African Americans had higher blood pressure. It was not explained. So this, at least, in part explains this difference in blood pressure in life of younger individuals, here in particular African Americans. This is important because when you're 20, 25, 30, 35, you don't see the doctor. You stay away from the doctor's office, right? And you don't see healthcare. And so since hypertension is silent, if one has a genotype like this, one can subject the individual to regular screening, monitoring of the blood pressure because they are at higher risk of blood pressure. So this was implemented, is now part of a national study in the US funded by the National Human Genome Research Institute that's called the GUARD study, the results of which are pending. So now to impress you a little bit with how powerful this approach has been, I would like to show you this particular view of the genome. It is a common view where you have the chromosomes, and then the colored dots is a discovery of a genetic marker on that chromosome in the region for a phenotype, be a disease or be it a trait. And this is how you see over time how our knowledge of the genetic architecture of phenotypic traits grew. And this goes only till 2017, and it started in 2005. So the knowledge has increased tremendously. And the question is, what do we do with it? It is very clear that not all of these findings directly translate into actionable clinical intervention or diagnoses. And in many cases, this approach has been criticized for detecting statistically significant associations between genetic markers and diseases phenotypes, but has been criticized for being clinically totally irrelevant. So that has been leveraged. But in the process of these studies, the knowledge of monogenic diseases has grown from under 2,000 to now over 8,000 known monogenic disorders. The understanding of what the genetic markers are that predict our response to medications, so pharmacogenomics, has now very well advanced into clinical actionability, with where we can predict very precisely based on genetic markers whether a medication is the right medication for a patient or whether it's dangerous or not working at all. And so many advances have been made, and clearly, in particular in the field of oncology, the genome is part of the clinical repertoire with the molecular tumor boards and so on. That's the tumor DNA and the tumor genome. We have not worked in the field of oncology. We've worked in the field of germline DNA and predicting a risk to develop diseases and have treatment response. So without going further into details of that part, I'm happy to talk more about specific results. That's been sort of a mainstay of my activity in the US at Mount Sinai, where I'm still a faculty in the Department of AI and Human Health. So now in Germany, I focused on digital medicine, digital health. In particular, I was convinced that machine learning AI would, over time, achieve a major impact in healthcare. And we're witnessing this every day. I think those of you who follow will hear about AI in radiology, in pathology, anything that's image-based and diagnostic, with computer vision and AI algorithms. They're getting very, very, very good in their performance and allow sort of diagnosis or assisted diagnostics anywhere, anytime. So I was fascinated by that, and I joined as a medical type, a bunch of software engineers and data scientists at the Hasso-Plattner Institute for Digital Health at the Digital Health Center, the Hasso-Plattner Institute in Potsdam, just outside of Berlin in Germany. And so that is, in fact, very unlike a medical institution. It's essentially, as I pointed out, people that want to optimize databases, want to optimize hardware performance, are concerned with theoretical informatics and cybersecurity and developing methods for machine learning and so on and so forth. What my vision there was that I would go there and I inspire the young and bright students there coming from IT and data science backgrounds to apply themselves to projects in life science and medicine. And so I was there, the first founding director of the Digital Health Center since 2017. And the first thing we did was implement a master course, Digital Health, which started in the fall of 2018 and is running since, admitting 30 students per year, total of 110 students at the time this slide was made had graduated. And the intention here was to bring back people from all over the world. So deliberately English speaking, international, and we wanted to bring together people from different backgrounds, students from healthcare, health sciences, and IT and information sciences. And we succeeded in generating that mix. And that has proven very successful. The program has been very successful. People, participants and graduates have delivered fantastic projects and thesis work, and also gone on to great positions at Google, Apple, at Charité, at Microsoft, and so on. And so that was the starting point. We had students and postdocs, and now we needed data to work with, and we needed patients to work with. So we launched the affiliation between Hasso-Plattner Institute and Mount Sinai in March of 2019. And why did we do that? Because there is a huge, as I already pointed out, resource, the Mount Sinai Data Warehouse, where there are patient records for 10 million patients. There's on any given day, there are about 5 million active patients in the system, and it's going back to 2003. And it's been updated by mapping the data to common data models that are widely used in the research community that works with real-world clinical data. So this is the Mount Sinai Data Warehouse, where we have structured and unstructured data, so codes and information about lab values, medications, diagnoses, but also all the clinical notes that are written in the context of healthcare. And so the institute that we founded there, the Hasso-Plattner Institute for Digital Health at Mount Sinai, had a number of pillars. One is to apply machine learning, artificial intelligence to this data environment. Two, to focus on multimodal data analysis, make better predictions based on data from different domains. We would improve the systems to do so, and we would introduce connected technologies such as wearables, smartphone, smartwatches, etc., and glean completely new information that is relevant for health and healthcare. So we had two foundational programs. One we called Air, so it's not Air Nike, it's not Air Jordans, but similarly, we wanted to be a bit catchy. We called it Air MS, so it's AI Ready Mount Sinai. And this is, we built sort of a data environment where the data from the multiple domains were coming together, and a data scientist could have, from a central point, access to all these different data from pathology, radiology, specialty systems, EEG, EKG, echo, and all of that. That needs to be brought together if you want to involve these data in your studies. And typically, scientists spend a lot of time in putting the data together than spending much more time on this data engineering and preparation than on the actual science. So this was founded to go from data, analyze data, and bring the knowledge to patients. And the second program was called the Digital Discovery Program, where we said, okay, we want to start with patients. We want to deploy the new technologies, wearables, mobile computing, and collect data out of daily lives of individuals, do studies in the daily lives of individuals, and bring those data to the science framework. And let me show you a few things about this. So clearly, this is, I paraphrase, so all the data comes together here. It's very pathology heavy. There's a slide from my colleague, Thomas Fuchs, who's the co-director of the program. And clearly, we want to improve diagnosis and prognosis by predictive modeling. So the first use case was in inflammatory bowel disease, complex disorder, very heterogeneous courses of the same diagnosis. And we felt we could leverage machine learning to improve predictions of what's in the future for a person diagnosed with inflammatory bowel disease. And here you see the concept. You have obviously also from BioMe the genetic data from pathology. Here for GI, obviously very relevant also from the endoscopy suite. The data come together in this AIR IBD. And now this is our first study that has come from this. There are multiple studies now forthcoming, increasingly also leveraging genetic and proteomic data going down to single cell transcriptomics and so on. And so this can be extensible if you're a healthcare institution and you certainly have your care now organized almost in semi-independent units and companies. So cardiovascular, Ajushe Heart is a different entity than Ajushe Neurology and so on and so forth. And you could envision that you have AI ready for all these domains and extend it in the future. So for us, just to demonstrate the utility of this, we wanted to map with predictive modeling the path of an individual that is at risk for high blood pressure and then goes actually down the path with sequela for complications, right? As you know, high blood pressure is one of the biggest risk factors worldwide for heart attack, for stroke, for heart failure, and a number of other often deadly conditions. And we wanted to always try to be ahead of the curve and use the data at a stage in the patient's trajectory that allows us to predict what's in the next 1 to 2 years, what's coming. So the whole team was working at different stages from predicting the onset of hypertension in the next 1 to 2 years to actually dealing with subtyping complications of hypertension. So here, a study that was published recently in JAMA, Journal of the American Medical Informatics Association, where we took the entire database with millions of patients and first established hypertension cases. So that was done by blood pressure medication, diagnostic code, and blood pressure measurements. And 2 out of the 3 had to be given to label a case. And then anything that's outside of this would be a control. There's no evidence of high blood pressure. And so then you start with 500,000 cases and over 3.3 million controls in the database, and you have various criteria of filtering, and you still have very sizable numbers for machine learning. Here we deployed another methodological trick, so to speak. We created a training and validation set just by cutting at a certain time the database in half. So this would be the cases and controls before 2016 for training and validation. And then there would be the subsequent data would be in a test cohort that would be sort of an independent test and cohort that we call data set A and B. And so what we did is apply different models of machine learning where you have different models, different methods, working on aggregated data. We, particularly in clinical context, value the time series, so the sequence of evolution of abnormality in data, and we wanted to preserve that at least for vital signs and laboratory values. We deployed the LSTM algorithm, and when we analyzed, we were in quite reasonable performance, in particular when we consider time series of vital signs or blood pressure, laboratory values that are relevant and so on. And even in the independent or semi-independent data set for testing, this performance remained very high. And so this is now being tested with external collaborators in Baltimore, in Philadelphia, and in Boston to see that whether this algorithm, when deployed in another institution, has similar performance in predicting the onset of hypertension within the next year or 2 years. And when you look at what are the features that drive the performance of this algorithm, you come up by and large with reasonable, plausible candidates like lipid profiles, kidney function, race, weight, age, that all feeds into the performance of this algorithm these are the most relevant features, so it's all plausible. A similar approach to some of predicting the complications of hypertension. So this is work that is now going on without me since I had left Mount Sinai end of March with my work in the Institute, although I'm still on faculty there. So this is going forward. Now, coming to the second part where we start with patients and generate new types of data that you don't have in an electronic health record in a clinical care context that might allow us to gain new insights and hopefully also actionable insights for either prevention, better preventive medicine, or better management of disease. And so this is a multidisciplinary program with engineering, software, data science, operations, research. Since we are working with patients, the regulatory compliance is an important aspect. So all of this needed to be part of the team. And in essence, we wanted to collect data that address the physiology of the blood measurement, metabolism, and so on, that give us better insights on health of the individual. We developed a platform that is executable as an app on a smartphone. That is essentially a platform where you can execute whole studies digitally, electronically, and remotely. And this proved a very, very important, decisive resource during COVID. COVID, as you know, in New York was a very, very prominent, huge problem, including Mount Sinai, and there was no research possible at the time with patients. And so we had this available in earlier versions. And so a lot of impulse to push forward for digital tools for research came also from the experience in COVID. So you can set up a study, you can have the consent accomplished digitally through the consent in the iPhone. You can set up tasks if you want to have the individual do certain things. You can connect wearables to this, so the wearable streaming data is collected through the mobile device and transmitted to a back-end database, and the data can be made available for research. So we did a number of studies using the platform. One was to look at heart rate variability. We had talked about earlier that this is increasingly a digital biomarker for stress and activity in the nervous system. And so this was deployed at Mount Sinai with healthcare workers during the COVID crisis. They received Apple Watches, and so the analysis of the data from the Apple Watches could show that actually a particular pattern in heart rate variability was predictive of the onset of a COVID infection, the manifestation 3 to 7 days later. So that was achieving a lot of publicity, including Apple promoted this, of course, on their website, and even Jim Cook noted it as a major advance. So, but we don't stop there, and COVID is behind us, thank God. We have these kind of technologies and approaches to deploy to many other aspects of life science and research. we became very interested in stress and resilience. Stress increasingly a major risk factor, recognized as a major risk factor for many chronic conditions, including not only mental health and psychiatric conditions, but also cardiovascular, immune diseases, and many other disorders. So we wanted to do the following. So there are standardized stress tests for which you need a laboratory and 2 operators and the whole half day of time of the individual. And so that certainly is not scalable to determine sort of a quantitative assessment of the stress response, the resilience of an individual to stressors in a controlled setting. So we figured, why don't we take the experience from this TRIA social stress test, that's one of the established tools in research, and try whether we can reproduce what this TRIA social stress test does with an iPhone, with people who go through that. So here we have the app, and you can sign up, and you get mass tasks, and they are impossible to solve, right? So we cheat, right? So they're possible to solve. You do something, it's very fast, you get agitated, and then it shows you that 90% of your peers do much better than you. So you have all kinds of dimensions of what induces stress. And so we found that, in fact, the experience of this really leads to an increased stress response as determined by validated questionnaires. So here the blue is after the mass task, people have higher scores on various validated scores for stress experience. So there's a control group where everything is easy, there's no stress, and these are the ochre bars. So this was the first paper that, in fact, yes, in an app, going through this experience for 7 minutes, you can induce a stress response, and that is quantifiable. And so this allows us now to take what is essentially this setting in research into a completely new framework that is entirely scalable and deployable in the field for phenotyping, digital phenotyping. And so this is the digital stress test. We now have analyses that include computer vision of the facial images, where, of course, you can see whether somebody is stressed, and you can also, the computer can see that, can be trained, and you can analyze the voice. And so now with these newer approaches with machine learning, we are developing a test that hopefully becomes a standard scalable test for phenotyping of the resilience to a stressor of an individual. And this, I think, has already had an impact here in the community when I presented this with the Synapse Neuroscience and Mental Health Center team. Already one of the collaborators is very interested in digital phenotyping, and we want to collaborate on this. So some other things, then I will move on to the Wyss Center. Newer way of running studies, and N of 1 study designs. Again, this is largely digitally based. I think perhaps in the interest of time moving forward, we are very interested in understanding how can we get the genomic information to people, to users, because the healthcare system, not only in Germany where it's notorious, I don't know about Switzerland, I don't know that yet, but in many countries in Europe and also in the US, is notoriously slow in accepting, adopting new technologies and information. And it's unfathomable to me that the information that we have in our genome, each one of us, about medications that we might need at any given time in our future, that information has not yet become part of clinical practice. Because with that information, medications that are not effective could have been saved, death could have been prevented, severe complication could have been prevented, and so on. So I'm coming to what our approach to this is, bringing pharmacogenomics directly into the hand of people or patients. And so this is, we took the information that is actionable, part of consortia guidelines, CPIC and working group guidelines, like you have in medical practice in many of domains. You have consortia and working groups that establish guidelines for standard of care practice. These guidelines exist for the use of genomic information in prescription medicine. And so we took this information into an app, and that app can be downloaded. So you have genotype information from a company or in a hospital. That information can be loaded into the smartphone and then be part of the analysis that's run on your smartphone. And the reason to do that is, I've paraphrased it, so there are in fact many medications that are working only in half or even fewer the individuals that take the medications. There are in Europe alone 200,000 deaths each year from adverse drug reactions, and so on and so forth. We can do better. So this is the PharmMe app, and in essence, it's a pharmacogenetic consulting tool, completely digital, and it gives you all the information that a pharmacogenetics consultant would give you, and it's just digital. So here you can have your gene report. It gives you the phenotype, whether you're a fast metabolizer, slow metabolizer, and what consequence it has. And if you take a medication, in this case ibuprofen, many of us have taken this medication, ibuprofen. It's an NSAID painkiller. You can see whether you have a problem when you take that based on the metabolism, the rate of metabolism of the medication that's encoded by your genome. So this then is depicted in a little bit of a layperson's way. So here clearly the same pill does not fit all. With this tool, you have the power to understand that for this guy, the blue pill is better than the red pill. It should be prescribed. And you can share the information when your doctor orders a medication. You can click, you can share the information with your doctor in the process, during the process of ordering a medication or ordering prescriptions. And so we're running a study right now where we compare the digital information sharing with the expert information sharing. So there are two arms in psychiatry and in cardiology. And so this is a non-inferiority study. We need to prove whether digital information sharing in this context of complex pharmacogenetic material is not inferior or superior to the information shared with an expert consult. And when we succeed in proving that, then I think we have taken a major step forward to pushing that this becomes a tool also supporting clinical care going forward. So with this tour, I wanted to leave you with that I think we are here at a point in time where we see an acceleration from what we have still, in many instances, healthcare today, with brick and mortar physical offices and so on, to a type of healthcare that is in many areas, certainly not all areas, emergency medicine, surgery, there are many areas where this will not be applicable as of yet. But in many areas of disease maintenance, health maintenance, we will have much more of an AI-driven digital healthcare framework. And certainly the technology is there. I mean, our smartphones, this is what we have today. Who knows what we're going to have in the future? Our smartphones are powerful enough to deliver the goods. So this is what I want to leave you with for this part. Obviously, a lot of people involved in this in both continents. And some of the work and the major aspects of the work are going forward. I'm more in the background, monitoring and supporting in a consultative capacity. Many of my colleagues who take this forward. Let me, in the last few minutes, introduce the Wyss Center. And the Wyss Center is, as you know, on campus biotech. It was established in 2014 with, at the time, a 100 million gift from Hans-Jörg Wyss, Swiss-American philanthropist through the Wyss Foundation. And a second gift had been given in 2019, so the total donation of the Wyss Foundation to support the center is now 220 million. And the impact, the emphasis is on translation of technology for clinical impact in the space of neurologic and mental health disorders. And so there are many collaborations with groups here on this campus, University of Geneva, on the Campus Biotech campus, as well as groups from EPFL, both on the Campus Biotech as well as in Lausanne. And so here, focus is on devices, neurotechnology and engineering. More recently, also expansion into bioengineering, biotechnology, and certainly increasingly also neurocomputation and neuro-AI. And so the center has engineering prototyping capabilities for devices, which is very important if you want to take technology, develop a device and bring it through the translational readiness scale. You need to fulfill certain criteria, prototyping, verification, validation. And so our team has all the expertise in the space of neurotechnology and medical devices there to take this forward. There's neurobiology with regard to omics, and gene therapy and delivery of nucleic acid type therapeutics into neurons and astrocytes that we have increasing competence, as well as software development and data analysis to support that. The center has a quality, clinical, and regulatory support team to support research and collaborations that take findings out of the lab and out of clinic into products and approval by the regulatory agencies to have an impact as products in the market. One particular strength is a specific type of imaging, a specific type of microscopy, so-called advanced light sheet imaging, where you can image entire brains, and we have now 3D visualization software that you can take literally a journey through any given brain. In this case, it's a mouse brain. Increasingly, the capacity is to really look at very thick section slices of human brain. And if we have the entire data support infrastructure solved, then we can put together entire human brain, this obviously from a brain bank, not from a clinical service, right? So this is available and is supporting a number of projects going forward, and in areas certainly related to Alzheimer and some of the other studies where structural abnormalities in the brain are signs of degenerative processes and other processes. We just finished, as I pointed out initially, and I come to a close, our process of prioritizing our projects, focusing our resources, and have a strategy going forward. And this strategy is captured here, very catchy, but you have to have this if you want to engage people that are not necessarily always thinking about this. So we want to innovate, accelerate, and transform lives. And it is our mission to bring new technologies and therapies to people with neurologic and mental health disorders. There are certainly 3 strategic objectives listed to support this mission. And with that, I come to a close. I am sure we will have the opportunity in one or the other setting to talk more about the details. But again, your understanding that in this process of restructuring, we'll be ready for a bigger show about what we have in terms of projects and vision in the next few months, perhaps after the summer. So with that, I close. I thank you for your attention. Sorry for taking a bit long, but it's been a long journey. And
thank you, Erwin. Definitely a fantastic journey and also a very nice teaser so that we are all now excited to know about the upcoming projects. But I think even just reflecting on what you've achieved and the whole journey that you took from clinical to data to AI and to digital medicine, I think is quite fascinating. And I'm sure there are questions and remarks, even though we haven't yet seen what's going to happen at the Wyss Center. So the floor is open. Are there remarks, questions? Yes, Antoine?
Yes. Maybe just have to switch on. Antoine Flau from the Institute of Global Health at the Campus Biotech Faculty of Medicine. In the field of prevention, would you say that there are some existing innovative solutions, as you mentioned, among omics or artificial intelligence tools, which are routinely useful already, or is it only for the future? How do you see that in the specific field of preventive services before the disease?
Very good question. And from the perspective of global health, there's another dimension that is access and healthcare delivery services. And with digital technologies, and I'm sure you're aware of this through your work, many problems in regions of the world where there's no access to, for instance, prenatal care and so on can be solved with smartphones and, to determine the position of the fetus and things like that. That is one area where digital technologies, mobile computing already has an impact, which is not necessarily felt so much in Switzerland or Germany, but in other regions of the world very much so. With regard to artificial intelligence, yes, you have increasingly in the space of prevention, the convergence of nutrition, physical activity, and genomics, including microbiome. And so bringing these data together, it's very difficult to quantify reliably the intake of calories and what calories you take in, protein, fat, sugar, during the day. So there are advances that, use from, how many times you open your refrigerator or, taking a photograph of the food you take in, and that comes to computer vision and algorithm analyzes how many calories were on your plate, things like that, which has a long way to go. It's still very unreliable. But physical activity is much more reliable now, particularly when you bring into the game variables where you have your step counts and you have many dimensions of physical activity throughout the day. Sleep quality as well. And so now the increasingly robust AI-driven outputs that are typically startup companies, right, that advise individuals about the right way to exercise, the right way to eat, and with that, obviously, in the context of healthy food intake, healthy metabolism, and physical activity, some of the major underlying problems that we need to address in a preventive scale. Obviously, the challenge is formidable because the enemy is sort of the food industry and entertainment and all of those, the enemy, quote unquote, because they make unhealthy food very cheap and saturate you with marketing that is very powerful and plays into health behavior and decision-making in behavioral economics. And so there will be a balance that needs to be struck between regulation and also elevating the availability of these tools that are increasingly proven and validated, so the AI and digital tools. I think in and of itself, it will still be an uphill battle to combat the pull that McDonald's and others have over our kids and so on through the marketing. So there are different dimensions that I'm bringing into the discussion here. And I think AI alone and digital tools will not be the answer to every issue in preventive medicine. We'll also take political action. That's what I'm trying to say. Okay.
Thank you. It was a fascinating talk. Really, I'm stunned. And now you're at the Wyss Center, with a lot about neuro devices, and maybe you certainly know that, especially the neuro affection insults, the immediate recognition is very important, because the handicap is much more severe than if you give the wrong antibiotic. But the studies you showed from the ICON Institute and all that, it's rather more on genomics, on pharma and tolerance of drugs, more, let's say. Telemedicine, is that coming from your interest, or is it still not a developed domain, neuro domain, on a large scale? A large scale, what you showed was impressive numbers. Something to come, or is it something we can offer here in Geneva?
Yeah, okay. So if I understand the question correctly, it relates to what I prefaced my talk with, that, I'm kind of, in my career, not linear, right? Not a linear progression, dedicating myself to solving one problem, as many colleagues do and admirably do, and that's very important. But for me, at this point, I've come from very much, science, leveraging genomics and digital tools, to populations, larger scale populations, predicting risk and generating new data to help us, predicting response to treatment, and so on. And now here, I'm focusing on taking this to another level, less to the level of populations, but to the level of individuals that face severe debilitation through their neurological mental health disorder. And I'm fascinated by the ability of some of these technologies to restore function. So individuals that have lost the capability peripherally through musculoskeletal disorders and so on, in part through stroke as well, the ability to speak, to restore that by decoding signals from the brain, applying AI, machine learning to decode these signals and sort of translate the intent to say something for the individual where, the normal capacity cannot no longer do that. Restoring mobility for people, for instance, spinal cord injury or stroke and other debilitating neurological diseases. But also I'm fascinated by the advances in looking at neuronal circuits and neuromodulation, moving away from pharmacologic intervention for mental health problems that have great impact and work in many cases, but in many cases they don't work and leave the individual with debilitating problems related to their mental health disorder, whether it's depression, schizophrenia, or some of the other, including epilepsy, has also some major issues there. So I'm fascinated by taking what we can do now with computer science and implantable technology to address those severe problems. So I'm moving more from a population level to a severe debilitating disease and solving those problems.
So my question is a bit similar to the one of Margita, but let me first contradict Margita. Using the wrong antibiotic can also be a problem. Yeah?
Can also be a problem.
But so I like your picture that you're surfing on the big waves, and I very well understood where you're coming from. But where do you see the next big wave?
Well, I think there are many panels around the world that are, convened by government actions and actions from foundations. What are the next big waves? I think With regard to the genome, we can read the genome quite well. I mean, it's hard to bring it into clinical practice at scale, but everything is available technologically. And the knowledge is also increasingly developed to the extent of actionability. That's what we want. But to write the genome, I'm speaking of CRISPR-Cas genome editing technology, that's a whole other ballgame, right? Where we have identified a variant that is causative for a phenotype, and we can, with precision genetic surgery, change that one nucleotide back to the wild type. That, I think, will come, has a lot of implications on an ethical level, societal and legal level. And sort of in the lay press, you have all this about designer babies and all those things going around. But nevertheless, there's a lot of investment in the space. There's a lot of progress in the space. And in the right setting, ethical and with good regulatory supervision, I think there will be major impact. Not tomorrow, not in 5 years, but in 10, 15, 20 years. I think AI is already around. I mean, that's not the next big wave. It is the wave right now. To the extent that we are talked about, AI and algorithms can assist interpreting EEGs where there's no specialist, right? And anywhere by cloud-based access to the tracing of the EEG. So all of this is already happening. I think what is another big aspect is nanotechnology and new ways of precision delivery of medications, whether it's nucleic acid-based mRNA therapeutics or by having nanoparticles and technologies that can direct the delivery of the cargo specifically where we want it. I mean, we would like, for instance, in epilepsy, target therapeutic delivery to a focus, right? Just one image, one picture. So this is happening where ultrasound and chemical composition of cargo that are injected, and then the ultrasound beam is focused at a specific location in the body, and where the beam hits the vesicle, it bursts and releases the cargo. So all these kind of things are coming. Robotics in certain areas is advanced already. It's getting every more miniaturized. So those are some of the next big things. But, from a person, individual, and medicine perspective, I think the writing the genome editing is going to be big. Not for every major common disease, but where you can clearly identify a genetic component that's going to be transforming for those people. Truly preventive, right, in that sense.
Other questions? Yes.
It was a great talk. Thank you very much. Should I need to? Okay. With this move from sort of more the trait features and populations, cross-sectional, and then following maybe clinical outcomes to the individual, there is much greater emphasis on time series data and on the individual modeling. And the one thing I always wonder about is the Apple Watch. Many people recharge it at night. And night, if you think about hypertension or other things, is so informative. So is that something where you anticipate that it will change? Other watches do continuous recording for long times, but is that a critical development stage, or is it just a trivial technological issue which is essentially solved?
Yeah, I think what wearables do at this point in time is to provide proof of concept for digital biomarkers. But I do believe that wearables is with us is transient, that we now have this because we are not yet at the stage where you have a small chip implanted between your thumb and your index finger, and that chip then, over time, for 3 months, then it's exchanged. It's a small tuck under the skin. But that chip will sense what, your wearable, your Apple Watch is sensing, or more, even better. With that, you can also think of sensing metabolites. That's what a lot of companies are working on. And I do believe that we're transitioning into an era where, you will have implantable devices that sense physiologic traits, blood pressure, other activity, electrical activity, metabolic activity, and transmit it. I mean, that we can transmit and analyze it once the data leaves the body or is collected on the body. That we've proven. So I think the time of wearable has come, but it will also end.
I think, well, we've absorbed quite a lot of data and knowledge and well, also expectations about those developments. I think you've stimulated us to think what's coming next and how to get there. I hope that, the tools that you already have in the hospital, including large data sets, clinical data in electronic form over long periods of time, images and all this can also be part of some of the work you may be interested in. And that's also one of the reasons I'm happy that you're coming to the hospital to meet with our colleagues from the hospital, because I think it's really important that we keep this link between advanced research, advanced technology, also the hospital where things, where the rubber hits the road and where things can really be tried and tested. And this is also the reason why we have this innovation center here, really to make the connection between great ideas, new developments, and how it actually generates impact for patients and for populations. So thank you for coming all the way to HUG. You're welcome here anytime. I'm sure we will have to continue inviting you to know more about what's happening at the Wyss Center, and hopefully see a lot of useful collaborations emerging from this. Great to have you in Geneva, and thank you again for coming today.
Merci beaucoup pour l'invitation, c'était un grand plaisir.
Wow.